Hey everyone, Kelly here, and it's been a while since I've made a video, so I want to talk about the books that I read in May and June, and I just don't have a good filming spot yet, so at least there's lots of light here, so you could see me and see the books, but I'm kind of squeezed in right now between like my huge donation pile is over there, my robot vacuum's over here, so there's just not like a good background right now, but eventually this will be all bookshelves that my husband is going to make and put up. But that might be another month or two before we get to that point. So for now, this is what it is. Freshly moved in. All right, so let's talk about things I read. First of all, I did have a DNF. So I ended up not finishing A Quiet Kind of Thunder by Sarah Bernard. And this was not the fault of the book. It was just, this is not the book for me anymore. And I've been thinking about that for a while. It's been sitting on my shelf for a long time. I bought it at a time when I was reading more contemporary young adult. I just don't read contemporary young adult much at all anymore. And I picked it up because I know that everybody like loves it. It has really high ratings. And I thought, well, you know, if I'm gonna like a contemporary young adult, it's probably gonna be this one. It's about a girl who is a selective mute, and she meets a new boy at school who is deaf, and they kind of just form a way of communicating with each other and then end up, you know, dating, falling in love, whatever. Yeah, so it's a young adult contemporary romance. And I made it halfway through. And like I said, there was nothing wrong with it. It seemed like well written. I would recommend it to teens, but it just wasn't keeping my interest. And I was reading this in May, and I told myself in May that I would not finish anything that I wasn't loving, or at least giving like a solid 4 stars to. If it was just kind of meh, I was putting it down. So I did, and then I was like, well, I'll pick it back up in June. And then I was like, I don't really want to. I don't care. So this was a DNF. Still would recommend it for teens. All right, so then I have some books that I returned to the library already. Basically everything I read in May, I returned to the library. So I'll just put up pictures. The first book that I read in May was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. And this one was a surprise for me. So I had read the first book in this series, Part of Your World, I believe it was, and didn't like it. I think it was 2 stars for me. I really didn't like the main character. I was like, maybe Abby Jimenez isn't for me, even though everybody loves her. But then I had a bunch of like booktube friends said, no, give her another chance. Maybe you just didn't like that character. Try another one of her books. And I had heard good things about this one, and just like tropes I liked, kind of like, you know, writing letters back and forth and stuff like that. So I decided to give it a try, and I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and I'm excited for the next book. So and I even went out and bought it after I finished this. I bought the 3rd book in this series. So I think that I do like Abby Jimenez. I just really didn't like the character in the first book. So anyways, this book specifically is another character in this world, but they are companion novels. You wouldn't have to have read the first one, but you know, if you want to be a completist and read them all, you can, because it's like the best friend of the woman from the first one. Now my kitty cat's gonna cry for you. And she is a doctor, and she meets this like new doctor at her hospital, and they seem to be competing for the same, you know, job, advanced job. And so she kind of like doesn't like him right off the bat. And then they have like a bad first encounter. And so like he has anxiety, and he doesn't really like to confront people in person. So he like wrote her a letter saying, you know, this is what happened. I didn't mean to start off on the wrong foot and all that stuff. And then they start like writing letters back and forth. And that's how they develop like a friendship and, you know, like a colleague relationship. And then it blossoms into more. And so this one also has some fake dating too and all of that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I think the only reason it wasn't 5 stars is that it was a little long for me for a contemporary romance. And the 3rd act breakup, I didn't feel like was necessary. Like, I know that happens in like so many romance books, but I felt like there was enough internal conflict with the characters, and there was enough plot that it didn't need that last like conflict at the end. So it wasn't like my favorite way of ending, but I did really enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to more books by Abby Jimenez now. And then the next book I read was quite different. It was a mystery. It was The Gathering by CJ Tudor. And this one I also gave 4 stars. Basically almost everything here I gave 4 stars. I think I have 1 3-star and 1 5-star, but most of them were just solid, good reads. So with The Gathering, I've read a lot of CJ Tudor's books. I think this is like my 5th book from her, and I just find them entertaining and fun to read. This one was a little more slower paced than some of the other books that I read by her, and was more like a mystery, like a detective mystery than kind of like some of the horror she's written before. And this is about a woman who is a forensic detective, I think she was called, and she's called into this town in Alaska, I believe, where there has been a murder and they suspect that a vampire did it. So in this world, vampires exist and like coexist with humans, but there's like an agreement that they won't like mess with each other. And so the reason they have this detective come in that specializes in these cases is that if she decides that a vampire did it, then there is a basically cull, C-U-L-L, of the like whole community of vampires. And so that's a big deal. And so they have to make sure it's a vampire that did it and not a human. So she's there to investigate. So it was very much a straightforward mystery, but with vampires. I thought it was entertaining. I enjoyed it, continue to enjoy her writing. And then the last thing I read in May, I only read 3 books in May. The last thing I read was Animal Farm by George Orwell. This is a classic. I also gave this 4 stars. I think that I read this in high school, but I don't remember if I read it or just, know about it, because I think most people just know what it's about, just, based on it being like such a popular classic. But I did really enjoy reading this one. I listened to it and I thought it was a good listen. It's a pretty short book, so it was a short audiobook, and I think the themes still stand up to current time. So it's like one of those classics that has held up. If you have no idea what Animal Farm is about, just really quickly, it's basically about these animals that decide they're tired of the way the humans are treating them. So they decide to take over the farm and they're going to run the farm themselves. They have all these rules about, how they're going to treat each other and how they're going to live. And then slowly, things start to change in their community. And yeah, it's pretty short. So that's all I would say if you don't know what it's about, and has really great themes. And I thought it was entertaining to listen to and still holds up. So those are all the books I read in May. Now I'll talk about the 2 books that I don't own that I have pictures of, and then I'll hold up the pictures, hold up the books that I do have. So the books that I had to return to the library, first I read 13s by Kate Alice Marshall, and this was another 4-star. And this is a middle grade thriller horror type of book, spooky middle grade kind of book, and I really enjoyed this. It's the beginning of a series. I definitely want to continue the series. This is about 3 young people that are turning 13. It's called 13s. They're turning 13, and basically every 13 years something happens to 3 13-year-olds in this town. And so one of our 13-year-olds is new to the town. Her name is Eleanor. She had just moved to the town to live with her aunt, and it's just discovering what is going on, how she might be involved in what is happening in the town. And she makes friends with these 2 other people that are also about to turn 13. And yeah, that sounds very vague, but it was entertaining. So they're just basically trying to figure out how they're related to the town history. Something's going, weird things are happening. They're seeing weird things, and how are they going to save themselves before they turn 13? I thought this was entertaining. I think it could be read as a standalone because there is kind of a conclusion to this arc, but you can tell there's more to happen. So I already got the 2nd book from the library, and I'm looking forward to continuing the series. All right, the next book is Shards of Honor by Lois McMaster Bujold. And this one is the very first of a very long series. I don't know how many books are in the series, 13, 15, and it's kind of like a sci-fi saga. And this one I ended up only giving 3 stars. I was kind of on the edge between 3 stars and 4 stars, but it's just not a book for me. I can see why people love this series and why it's very beloved in the sci-fi world. It just wasn't for me. So I think it's probably a 4-star quality book, but just 3 stars for me, because I won't be continuing the series, and I only liked about half of this book. And the reason, I'll tell you the reasons once I describe what this is about. In this, we are following a woman named Cordelia, and she is on a mission on this planet, kind of like discovering the like flora and fauna of the planet, when her group is attacked by these people. And it's a lot of political stuff about this group that is attacking her, are more like military-based society, where she's more of like a peace and science-based society. Anyway, so she is taken hostage by somebody from that group. It's Verkos again, who is the like name of the series. And yeah, and they kind of like are trying to figure out what is going on, because he is also like was not planning on taking anybody hostage. That this kind of just happened because of other people in his crew. So yeah, that didn't really like explain very much about what's happening, but it's just like a space romp. There's lots of politics going on. We're learning about different planets and groups of people, and how they're interacting in the solar system, galaxy, I don't know. I am not the most like well versed in this kind of book, where it's such like a huge, world that is like being created. And what I liked about this is I loved Cordelia as a character. I love that these are older characters. I think they were both like middle-aged, and I really like that. I am finding as I'm getting older, I am enjoying books that involve middle-aged people, but that are still like exciting, like fantasy or sci-fi books. So they're not just like middle-aged people living our lives in the real world, like, but out in fantasy books, because there's so many fantasy books that like have 18-year-olds as their main character, and even like adult ones, they'll have like young people leading it. So I kind of like a seasoned main character. So that's what I really liked. I liked the two main characters, and the first half of the book was kind of like them surviving and them getting to know each other, and like their differences and similarities, and that part I really liked. So I liked the character work, but then it got very political. And I think that's kind of the trajectory of the thing, is like the politics between all these, worlds. Sorry if you can hear my daughter taking a bath in the background. She was like screaming for like a half hour straight before the bath. So I'm just glad that she's in the bath and calm. So if you hear the splashing, it's fine. She's fine. She's old enough to be bathing on her own. And anyways, yeah, I just don't really, I'm not somebody that really cares for like all the political stuff. So good book, not something that I particularly enjoy, but if you do like politics and like that kind of stuff and a big, huge scope of a world, then I would recommend this, because I think the characters were great. So now we're on to books that I have. So I did read 2 middle grade books with my daughter on a road trip, so I'll only hold up one. So this is a middle grade fantasy series that is based off of Korean mythology, and the main character is adopted. So that's what my daughter was really interested. Both my kids were adopted, and so I think she was really excited to see a main character that was adopted, and in a positive way, because so many books have like kids that are abandoned, or like have foster families or adoptive families that aren't nice to them, and like the orphan trope is like really popular in middle grade. And so it's nice to see like an adoptive family that is like very positive and loving and all that. So that was like why I want to listen to this with her. We were going on a trip to Ohio driving, and so we listened to one book on the way there and then the second book on the way back. And this is really good. So basically we are following Riley, who is the one that was adopted into this family. She does not have the magic of the rest of the people in her family, since she's not a blood relative. And so she kind of feels like this, they're at the age where her sister is coming into her magic. And so Riley's feeling a little jealousy that she doesn't have the magic that her family does. And in this like world, like all these different Korean families have different magical abilities. Like her family has healing powers. She would love to be able to also have healing powers. And so her and her sister kind of like do this spell that's supposed to make it so that her sister can share her magic with her. And of course, things go wrong, and it all goes from there. This is her best friend that's in there. So her and her best friend kind of go on a quest to figure out how to fix what happened between her and her sister and this magic. And so there's lots of like goddesses in this, and mythical creatures, and it's just really fun. If you or your child likes like the Rick Riordan books, these would be good ones for that. I just find the main characters really good. There's also some high stakes in this, which I thought was really entertaining, because sometimes everything just like wraps up with a nice little bow when you read middle grade fantasy. And this one, you definitely want to like move to the second one, because some stuff happens in this one that you're like, oh, yeah, it's not all, you know, sunshine and roses. And so we moved almost immediately onto the second one, which introduced some new characters, and really enjoyed this one. I think I gave this one 5 stars and the first one 4 stars, because I thought the second one really opened the world up. I loved the interaction between the 2 sisters, which was so great to see. And my daughter really loved both of these, and we had just started the 3rd book. So it's a trilogy. We just started the last one. So I would recommend those for either you or the kid in your life. Next, I have a nonfiction book that I read, which is also 4 stars. Like I said, almost everything is 4 stars. I read Raising Kids Beyond the Binary, Celebrating God's Transgender and Gender Diverse Children by James Bruserhoff. I will preface this by saying I do know the author, like not like as in we're friends, but like that I have met her and spent time at camp with her, like when I used to work at camp. Her and her husband and her baby daughter had come to camp, and so I know them, and so I wanted to read her book. But Jamie's daughter is transgender, and so this is kind of like her experience raising a child that was gender diverse and then decided to transition, and how we as a church and how we as parents can support children that are either transgender or just like non-binary, gender diverse, whatever. And this was really good. I think this is a very good base if you don't know anything about the topic. I think it's a really great base for me. Like I had done some research before, just because I am interested in like just being supportive of, you know, lots of different groups of people. So I knew some of this stuff, some of the terminology, some of the basics. But if you don't know anything, I think it's great that she's starting with the basics. And then I also got a lot out of this of just like how to change our language in general. I think this would be really good for teachers to read. It does have like a Christian thing in it, but it's not in your face. So like, I think that educators could read this and just like, if they didn't want the like the God stuff, the Christian stuff, they could just take that part out. And there's still plenty of stuff in here that is not related to the church. But I think she's also writing this so that like pastors and, you know, youth leaders can, you know, be able to make sure they're welcoming LGBTQ plus kids into their communities and making them feel welcome. So that was part of this, but I also think, like I said, it's good for educators or anybody that works with kids. I also work at a nature center that has a lot of kids, you know, involved in programs. We have a preschool there that has just gone through like some training about being gender inclusive and all that. So that was part of the reason I also wanted to read this, to make sure that I knew all the terminology and was being, you know, because I think that sometimes we just have it ingrained in our head that like, you know, if we're going to split a group into 2, we might say boys on this side, girls on this side. And, you know, the author talks about how we don't need to do that. We don't need to separate kids that way. It's just kind of being able to take out some of that gendered language that we use and just being more inclusive to everyone. So I think it's good if you can read it whether you are a Christian or not and still get a lot out of it. And the audiobook was good. It's not narrated by the author, but it is by a narrator that I've listened to before, and it was a good audiobook. So the last book that I read is Threads That Bind by Kika Hatsopoulou. And this is a fantasy that's kind of got some Greek mythology in it. So I thought this was a really cool world. I actually like got about a third of the way through this and already pre-ordered the second book because it doesn't come out till August. Because I'm just like really excited to see the conclusion, because I think it's just gonna be a duology, and I hope it's just a duology because I just want to like have it finished, because this kind of ends in the way that you want to know what happens. And anyways, we are following a woman. Io is our main character, and she's descended from the Fates. So every like generation there are 3 siblings that are descendants of the Fates that do the same thing as, you know, one to cut, one to draw, one to bind. Is that what the 3 things are? Anyway, so she is a cutter, so she can cut somebody's life thread, technically, like that would kill them, or more likely what she does is maybe like she is a investigator, like where she kind of like helps people as a private investigator and uses her connection to be able to see people's threads, to see like, you know, if somebody's having an affair, she can see the thread that connects them to their like mistress or whatever, and be able to follow that to take pictures and evidence for the like, you know, wife or whatever that wants to find out if her husband's cheating, you know, all that stuff. So that's kind of like what she's using her powers for. But then some like women who are like using their life threads to kill people show up in her city. This has like never happened before. So she is called in as being somebody that is an investigator. So like knows how to like search out crimes and, you know, like solve crimes, but also because she can see the life threads that she would be able to specifically be able to find this like killer. And so it's really interesting. So it's like murder mystery / like this mythology, and there's also a romance, like a very slow burn romance, because she has like a thread that she knows is connected. It's called like a fate thread, where she's connected to this man that she doesn't know, but she knows that she's fated to like, you know, love this person. And she's like feeling conflicted of like, should I tell him that we are like fated, or should I just let him have free choice and, you know, like not give into that, or should I cut that thread? You know, so there's that kind of romance element too. And yeah, it was just really good. I found it really entertaining. I just feel like I haven't been sucked into a fantasy world in a while, and this one really pulled me in. I really enjoyed it. I'm excited for the next one, hoping it's the conclusion, because like I said, this one ends like, and you're like, I gotta find out what happens next. And I just really liked our main character too. I liked the, you know, like the characters that we're following, the villains. I think it's good that the villains are also pretty like complex as well. They're not just like, this is a villain and they don't do anything good. There's like, yeah, there is complexity and subtlety in their character. And so I just really liked a lot of stuff about this one, and I'm excited to continue. And that's it. Those are all the things that I read in May and June. As you can see, mostly 4 stars. So I count that as a win, that even though they weren't necessarily a lot of 5 stars, I count 4 stars as just being really entertaining, and really glad that I read them. No regrets. And I'm happy that I had a really good couple months of reading, especially since it's been so busy here lately, moving into the new house, starting my new job. I just haven't had any patience for books that I am not enjoying. So I hope to kind of continue that, to just, if I'm not liking it, there's just no point in continuing, you know, DNFing books that aren't like really making me excited to read them, and just reading books that I am enjoying reading. So that's it for me. If you would like to talk about any of those books, I would love to hear from you down below, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.